Hey everybody, before the show starts, we just wanted to let you know something cool that we've been working on.
Yep, we're super excited. We told you guys that we'd be doing a class, and we have. The first session of our free class is up on YouTube.
And we put it on our Facebook group. So this is just session 1. We're going to be releasing episodes every few days, and it's going to be about getting your year started off right. And it's our first free class. We're really excited to offer it.
So go check it out if you want to leave the overwhelm in 2017 and set up those railroad tracks so that every single day you can be excited and be moving closer to your goals.
It's really hard though. It feels like, instead of fighting fire with fire, you're fighting fire with a butterfly. When you're trying to get back into calm out of this cycle.
Yeah.
It's like, what good is this? But it is good. It's one of God's great tools.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Epic Everyday, our weekday podcast for busy, overwhelmed Christians who don't want to live in franticity and instead want to live in freedom and abundance and peace. I'm Liz Frericks, and this is my husband Evan.
Hello there.
And we're so glad you guys are here with us.
Yes, we are.
Ever so lovely
Monday. So I'm excited about the next few weeks of our show here. For the next 5 weeks, we're going to be talking about the same thing I'm going to be talking about in my adult Sunday school class at church. We're going to be talking about these 5 principles of a life lived with consecrated intent. And that's kind of a wordy title, but our pastor made the announcement and it was a bit of a mouthful. So this week, the 5 principles are honesty, dignity, community, responsibility, and simplicity. And so we'll hit one of those each week from now until the first week in February.
Mm-hmm.
So today we're going to talk about honesty, and especially honesty in how we treat our failures.
Yes, because that is a big topic. As the year rolls over, we talked last week about hanging on to our baggage and our emotional compound interest from previous year.
Yeah.
Which is not a good thing.
No. Yeah. You want to check that baggage and leave it at the airport.
Exactly. But I think, it brings up a lot of feelings of failure when you get around to the new year and you look back at your goals. There was somebody on Facebook that posted my goals for 2018 are to do the things that I wrote down in 2017 that were the things that I promised myself from 2016, and all this long spiel went all the way back to 2014.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think that is a lot of people's goals. They're like, I'm going to do the things that I didn't do last year.
Right. Well, talk about getting bogged down with regret and in the past. I mean, I think what we don't often realize is, we think, this goal was so golden 5 years ago that I can't just let it slide and never do it. I got to do it. And then you're still stuck there. But each year, we've grown over the past year, whether we really were that intentional or not. And this year's full of new opportunities. We don't have to keep banging our head against the wall of that, whatever that goal was.
Yeah, seriously. If that goal really didn't work for you, there's a reason that it didn't work.
Sure.
And we talked about last week. Right. Yeah. What was the roadblock? Was it a time thing? I know for me, sometimes when I write down my goals, goals are supposed to be SMART. Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time sensitive. And those attainable, realistic ones, for me, sometimes, attainable is this physically possible?
Yeah.
And then realistic is, do I actually have the time and energy to devote to this goal? And sometimes I overestimate how much time and energy I have. Mm-hmm. And so then I'm like, I can totally do that goal. So actually, revamping your goals every year can be so helpful to say, why didn't I get this done? Or maybe it was just a bad goal, a goal for something that was important.
Out of your control, maybe.
Yeah, or what is important to somebody else, but not really you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's definitely one way. It's easy to see that kind of failure around New Year's because we're like, I didn't do it again. there's a number of other ways to look at our shortcomings to try to organize them. I mean, if when we're talking about honesty here, especially that we're talking about sin, really.
Yeah.
And I think failing to grow is a kind of sin. And so if
Yeah.
we're using like, oh, I can never achieve goals as sort of an excuse of some kind, that's a big problem.
I love hearing you say that, Taylor.
Yeah, I'm talking to me. So we can't avoid guilt, but part of getting out of it and into the gospel of grace is identifying our failure. And that's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah.
I mean, even just thinking about it sounds like it's just going to be a world of hurt.
Right. Well, and I think that's, where the CSCs come in, because we can get stuck in anxiety when we're dealing with failure. I think most of us, when failure comes up, anxiety comes up too. And
Well, yeah, we don't want to be. I mean, that's the darkness and light thing, right? Like, our sin likes being in the dark. It doesn't want to be discovered.
right. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to stay there.
Yeah.
We don't have to stay in anxiety. Like, that's the great thing about Christianity. I love that Christianity fully admits that we are broken human beings, that we're not perfect, that we make mistakes. And then on the other side of the spectrum, that we're still beloved by Jesus, that Jesus died, that redemption is from the inside out and applies to every moment of our lives. There's no like, here, let's minimize sin and let's try to all act like we're perfect, because we're not. But there's also no, like, there's not that hopelessness of like, oh man, I'm such a failure. I've messed up all these different places. What am I going to do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think what am I going to do? I mean, one of the obvious things we're going to try to do is to not do that anymore. But that becomes a problem too. I mean, some of these behaviors are learned behaviors. They're things that have helped us cope, and just quitting them,
Right.
sometimes you can't. You're actually stuck. You're
Yeah.
kind of addicted to your behavior, whether it's telling white lies or rude humor or minimizing the facts. I mean, those are all things that I've struggled with, and it just seems like it happened again. I had no control. And as soon as you start trying to quit or start
It gets
trying to
even
stop,
harder.
it's more and more evident that this is a behavior, and this is why, these principles that we're going to talk about are so powerful to kind of take away the power of those things that we can't
Yeah.
just quit when we decide, oh, I better quit now. You don't just do it.
I think also, when we're talking about failures, not just sin failures, but failures like, hey, I set these goals and I didn't actually do them.
Yeah.
We have to talk about growth. Like, I loved Zootopia because I loved their whole message that, you have to keep trying. You have to
Yeah.
keep making mistakes in order to learn and grow. And if you're not trying, then you're failing. Like, because to me, growing up, there was such a huge emphasis on you should never fail that I learned never to try anything that I might potentially
Right.
fail at.
Yeah, because failing is such a big no-no.
Right, exactly. So kind of having to reprogram that as an adult, that it's okay to make goals that are a little bit risky and to try something that you're not going to be perfect at the first time. It's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah. And it's going to be extra hard when we're trying to grow relationally and spiritually, and we're trying and failing some
Yeah.
of these techniques. I mean, when we're trying and failing the CSC, that's like, oh, I wasn't calm. I was supposed to be calm.
You get anxious about not being
Yeah.
calm.
Or, I wasn't very connected today, but, and when we try, like we talk about safe tests a lot or whatever, like if it's going to involve somebody else and it's a real spiritual growth kind of personal development thing, failing's going to feel a little worse than, because it's not just us. Somebody else might see us
Right.
fail,
Oh, yeah.
but we've got to keep putting ourselves out there.
So I think then we kind of have to ask the question of how exactly do we stay calm in the middle of failure? Because it's, it's kind of that vicious cycle. Like, you get stressed because you made a mistake. or because you're struggling with a sin issue, either way.
Mm-hmm.
And then your stress makes you more likely to fall into those unhealthy behavior
Yeah,
patterns.
because you got to deal with your stress. You got to cope.
Right. Or if you're, trying to be creative and to learn a new skill, you're less likely to be able to learn a new skill.
Yeah.
So then you get more stressed. So then you fail worse, more stress, failure. Yeah. It's this really frustrating cycle. And if we don't ever break out of it, like, we're just going to be more and more frustrated with our lives.
Yeah, it's funny. One of the big ways to break out of it is to engage in something like meditating
Yeah.
and quiet, reflective prayer. And sometimes we may not even realize we're in that cycle until we try to start meditating, and then all this stuff comes up. It's uncomfortable. It's maybe causes anxiety.
Oh,
Meditating
yeah.
is causing anxiety. Imagine that. Or it's like, you make it for 30 seconds and then like, okay, that's enough meditating for today. Like these
Right.
things are going to come up, and that's the battleground there.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, when I first started learning meditation, I had a sleep doctor that was like, you need to do meditation before bed. And I could not do it to save my life. Because every time I would try and relax, I would have relaxation-induced panic attacks, which is where your body is so used to stress that it considers, turning down the stress level to be a threat in itself, because you lose that hyper-awareness.
Yeah, you're like Mad-Eye Moody. You've got to have constant vigilance.
Exactly.
And as soon as you start to relax, there's no more vigilance. And so it's like danger, danger.
Right. Yeah. So then my body would throw me into a panic attack instead of actually relaxing.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it took time to just keep practicing in the middle of it and keep working my way through it.
But yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you can't just figure your first experience with meditating. If it's a failure, that's what meditating is like, and I'll never get it.
Right.
I mean, so many of these things take practice. It's really hard, though. It feels like, instead of fighting fire with fire, you're fighting fire with a butterfly. when you're trying to get back into calm out of this cycle,
Yeah.
it's like, what good is this? But it is good. It's one of God's great tools.
He loves butterflies.
Yeah. It's a weightlifting, bodybuilding butterfly.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Glad it's not just a regular butterfly.
You like that?
Now I want a picture of a weightlifting, bodybuilding butterfly. So I think another thing is to reframe the way you view failure, which this was something that was really hard for me to do, but gradually I have managed to kind of put a different picture frame on there and be like, okay, wait a minute. What is failure? Because once I stepped back and I asked myself, what is failure to me? I realized it's not trying. It's seeing a mistake as an end point and being like, well, that's it, like throw away whatever happened, versus being somebody that says, okay, I made a mistake, but I'm going to learn from this. I'm going to see it as an opportunity and I'm going to grow.
Yeah, that's a huge mind shift.
Yeah.
That takes practice too.
Yes. And I will freely admit this is not something that I can do all the time, but
Yeah, I struggle with this. I struggle with having a lot of expectations for myself, especially when it comes to something like working on the house or the car. And if I can't do it right, or if I break something, I like making mistakes, like, oh, now I got to spend more money and I got to fix that now. And I beat myself up, and that's how you learn. I don't automate. I can't go to the Matrix and download how to fix everything in the house. I've got
Wouldn't
to
that be
try
awesome?
stuff. Yeah, it would. So yeah, we need grace with ourselves.
right.
That's part of honesty, because we live in the gospel of grace.
Yeah. And if you think about it, I mean, treat yourself like you're a baby. If you saw a baby that was learning to walk, every time they fell down, would you be like, dude, get your act together? Yeah. You're not going to be like, you're so stupid, baby. Don't you know how to walk? You're going to be like, oh, it's okay. You're doing
Yeah.
great at walking. You're going to focus on the fact that they made a step. Whether it was 1 step or 5 steps or whatever, you're just going to be celebrating that. You're not going to be like, oh man, you are such a failure. And you're going to fail the rest of your life. Which I think is so, at least for me, I tend to extrapolate like, oh, I failed in this, so I'm going to just keep failing. Versus being like, oh, I failed and I'm learning. That means I am going to do awesome the next time.
Yeah.
Those mindset shifts can really help when we're dealing with failure and being honest with ourselves, especially around this time of year.
Yeah. And those are things you can ask. You have to ask God for help for, to change our mind, to change our outlook. I mean, we can't just decide that, oh, I'm not going to worry about failure anymore. Cool. Thanks, podcast. Like, it's a process.
Totally.
And it's a Holy Spirit process.
Yeah. I feel like we should throw in a poster, like instead of a kitty poster, the like hang in there.
Yeah.
We need to now have a weightlifting butterfly.
Well, maybe we can work on that together. We'll see. Maybe that should be a t-shirt.
You could draw one.
Well, keep us accountable. Maybe we'll do it.
Yeah, if anybody wants a weightlifting butterfly, hit us up. And then we'll know we should take the time to actually draw it or whatever.
There we go.
All right. We love you guys and we are praying for you. Thanks to everybody that's been sharing the show. We really appreciate it.
Please do share the show.
Yes. If you have found it helpful, please do share the show. Because the more people that are living in the CSDs, the better the entire body of Christ is. And we are such firm believers in utilizing these principles as a pathway to find true freedom and abundance. It's such a difference to be able to wake up and love your life versus being constantly in like, I just have to get through today. I just have to get through today. So, yeah. All right. Come back tomorrow and we will keep talking about honesty and failure and all that great stuff and surrender.
Yeah, tomorrow we're going to talk about how attachments are idols. The things that those coping mechanisms we mentioned earlier can actually be idols.
All right. Have an awesome Monday.
See you guys later.